to address the facts, the problem that we defined earlier. To which the other gentleman says, I'm not sure I'm following what you're saying. So the first gentleman returns to the conversation and says, let's establish some common ground. Let's establish what principles are non-negotiable. And before we can begin anything, I think one of the first principles we must agree is non-negotiable is that whatever solution we come up with must be, first of all, consistent with the Constitution, which is the ultimate rule of law. And it also must be consistent with the values and principles espoused in our Declaration of Independence, which our Constitution, in effect, codified as the foundational law of our country. And therefore we must acknowledge that above all, our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and property, those rights came not from government, but came from our Creator. So establishing that as some non-negotiable principles upon which we will not violate, we can begin to move forward. So let's talk about some other ones that might be out there. Let's look at the principle, as we discussed earlier, of how immoral it is for us to continue to pass along our debts to future generations. So based on that principle, whatever we come up with, we must find a way to pay for. Now, what other principles are there that we want to establish as non-negotiables? To which the other gentleman stands up and says, well, it's important that everyone pay their fair share. To which the other gentleman replies, I agree. Define fair share. Well, it's not right that so many of the rich keep getting richer and the poor get poorer. And that may be true, but you didn't answer my question. Define what is fair. If you can't define what fair is, then how can we work towards some sort of compromise that creates a solution to address the problems that we've already established? And that is where we are left here in Kabuki Theater at the end of Act 3. The opportunity for leadership is there. The framework for leadership has been laid down. The question is, what happens in Act 4 as our curtain drops on Act 3 of Kabuki Theater this week? The crowd begins to murmur. Yes, fair. Well, of course, those evil rich. And, well, what about the poor? And yammer, 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 yammer. But yet, still, no one coming forward with a clear definition of what they determine fair to be. Is fair a consistent percentage that everyone should pay? Is fair even a progressive percentage? And if so, based on what? Where does that progressive nature of fairness come from? Because we certainly don't want to, bring anything like, religion or morality into the equation, do we? Because there is some biblical principle that one could make an argument, and I'm not trying to make that argument here, but I throw it out here just for conversation here on the Palmetto Conservative Show. The Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required. But the Bible is not saying so in terms of material wealth and resources. But on that basic principle, one could make the argument for a progressive case of taxation, which I believe we already have. We have an income tax that is based on percentages. Even if there were one single tax bracket and it was based on a percentage, that rate is progressive, because the more you make, the more you pay. Same percentage, but nevertheless. So the murmuring continues as the curtain rises on Act 4 of this week in Kabuki Theater. We find our two characters wringing their hands as they sit across the table, trying to decide how in the world they can possibly go forward. There's so many special interests and constituencies that they have to please. And then, as they're reviewing where they've been, where they've acknowledged they agree on certain facts that describe the problem, they agree that a solution is required, and they've established some basic set of principles that will not be violated. One man looks at the other and concludes that in the end, it's not possible to satisfy every special interest and individual voter and donor to their political campaigns, but the only moral and right thing to do is to be true to their oath of office, which calls them to support and defend the Constitution, the very foundational law and framework that provides the solution forward. And both men look upon one another and say, this is political suicide. But both look at each other, look at all that they've identified and talked about, and realize that to do otherwise is national suicide. And the only principled compromise they have is to do the right thing and stand with the people by following the Constitution. Yes, their party bosses will be upset. And perhaps current generation will begrudgingly also be upset. And the younger generation, for whom these two individuals are beginning to demonstrate leadership, may not understand. But in the end, they realize that's the right thing to do as they shake hands and agree that they are going to lead out, that they are going to demonstrate that while they individually comprise one vote each amongst the 535 that make up our Congress, they are going to fight with their last breath to do what's right to save our country, that they are willing to commit political suicide in order to prevent national suicide. And with that, the curtain drops on Kabuki Theater this week, and the audience stands there stunned. They're expecting a huge crescendo of emotion and drama and further theater, when in fact it's so simple right there before their eyes. And they're left in their chair, jaws open, aghast at what they saw just happen behind them. And the lobbyists and the academics and the elite and the Washington insiders, the entrenched incumbents, look on from the seats in Kabuki Theater in silence, in stunned, shell-shocked silence, when suddenly one of the ordinary people in the audience, John Q. Public, if you will, stands up and begins to applaud. And then others join with him, until there's a loud but not raucous round of applause as the lights come up in the theater, and the academics and the elites and the lobbyists and the Washington insiders and the entrenched incumbents remain shell-shocked. And that, my friends, is Kabuki Theater this week. Now, the odds are probably pretty slim that Kabuki Theater here on the Palmetto Conservative Show is going to win any Golden Globe Awards or Viewers' Choice Awards, but hopefully you've enjoyed that little soliloquy. We're going to take a quick break here, musical interlude, and come back at the top of the hour and pick up with some of the other commentary that I have on the issues before us from down here at the bottom of the Fiscal Canyon. Looking forward with a positive eye on 2013. You're listening to the Palmetto Conservative Show here on the Conservative Broadcast Media Network. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Everybody wants